How do we make sure there's toppings in each bite of Papa John's pizza? We check 80,000 times a year. Now get an extra large 2-topping pizza for just $11. Everyone's doing their part to make your game day better.
Pizza with Pepsi. Delicious.
Mark Lee became the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq, sacrificing his life for our freedoms and his SEAL teammates. America's Mighty Warriors was born out of Mark's challenge to pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life. We honor our troops and Gold Star families by providing programs that assist recovery after injury or loss. Partner with us by making a generous donation. Text MARK to 234-231-9284. America's Mighty Warriors, supporting our troops and the families of the fallen.
Style. Selection. Service. Quality. Value. See what everyone is talking about. Ashley Furniture Home Store.
Charleston Crab House has been serving locals and visitors alike for the last 20 years. We have our crispy whole flounder. We have the seared ahi tuna. You name it, in the seafood business, we have it.
Be sure to stop by the Tiger and Leaf Lounge whenever you visit our locations. We have many frozen and specialty drinks, awesome margaritas. One of my favorites is the Wapu Punch.
If you don't like it down in the historic district, come over to James Island, sit on the Intercoastal Waterway. It is an unbelievable view where it's southern seafood at sensible prices and a darn good time.
It's hard to get some.
So focused on what he's doing. Brent Thompson coaches show. Chat with all things Bulldogs with the head coach himself. You can always send in your questions on Twitter with the hashtag AskCoachBT. Now let's go live to the Marina Voyages Tour Restaurant in downtown Charleston with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Brent Thompson, and the varsity Bulldogs Luke Moore.
Good evening and welcome to the Marina Variety Store Restaurant in downtown Charleston at 17 Lockwood Drive for tonight's coaches show with the head coach Brent Thompson of the Citadel Bulldogs, and a packed house tonight with a bunch of our closest friends as the Bulldogs come off that win with Charleston Southern and head into conference play at 2-2 this weekend. Coach, good evening. How are you?
I'm well. Well, it looks like everybody thought we were going to be at Salty Mike's. That's why we got such a great crowd here. I tried to get it going last night. They all went to the wrong spot, I guess.
Good to have everybody with us both in person here and either online or on the radios every Wednesday, 7 to 8 during the football season with the head coach. And as you heard, you can always participate, ask your questions on Twitter using the hashtag AskCoachBT, and we always try to sneak some of those in throughout the hour as we get ready for kickoff Saturday on the road at Sanford to begin conference play. We'll get to that game coming up in just a little bit, but first, of course, as always, recapping the previous game, and in this case, a win against the rivals, Charleston Southern, this past Saturday at Johnson Haygood Stadium, and another great game and great win for the Bulldogs under the lights. And now, Coach, 2-2 heading into conference play. Do you like where you are, especially coming off these last two wins heading into the SoCon play?
Yeah, I thought we looked at the schedule. We were going to be about 2-2, and I think that's about where we wanted to be. Ideally, we'd like to be 4-0, but we had some pretty good teams in that stretch right there. So I think Georgia Tech was going to be on that list, but we'll take it. And then, of course, the win last week was always good, being an in-town rival for us. Got up for that game, played an extremely good defensive football game that game.
2-2 coming off the back-to-back wins, but I know coaches are never 100% pleased. You're always looking to clean up some things. So as we head into conference play, what are some things that you've been emphasizing this week with the guys, or hoping to continue to clean up as we head along throughout the season?
Well, defensively, it's been tackling. We haven't done the greatest of jobs of tackling. However, we've done some other things fairly well, and we're getting better at those. We've just got to keep progressing in that area. On the offensive side, we've got to continue to run our offense. We've kind of been in and out of it a little bit with the quarterback situation. But I thought we've had some pretty good offensive days. We've also had some days where we could have been a lot better off. So continuing to press. And our offense is one of those ones that gets better with time more than anything else. Special teams-wise, we've got to do a better job on kickoff return. We made the decision on a couple of occasions that we were going to fair catch them. Georgia Tech was covering the field extremely well. The kicker was putting them traditionally about 2 or 3 yards in the end zone. We were going to fair catch most of those. Unfortunately, there was maybe 1 or 2 that we probably could have brought out. But we did get the two punt blocks, and we also did have a surprise onside that was pretty good for us. So special teams, we've had our ups and downs. We've just got to continue to get better at some of our return game.
I will circle back to the kickoff returns a little bit later on, ask you about that. But Saturday, the win against Charleston Southern, 22-13. There was some drama in that game, mainly from the other side, with some comments after the game. I'm not going to ask you to comment on any of that. But in terms of the game itself, some chippiness, a hard-fought win. Did it feel like a rivalry out there with Charleston Southern Saturday night?
Well, first of all, the crowd was great on both sides. I thought we had a really good crowd, and you really felt it in the fourth quarter. And making a team go that way in the fourth quarter has really been a home field advantage for us. Back into the core cadets, they were into the football game. It felt like a good rivalry game. Early on, we had that same feeling last year until it became out. So I very expected it was going to be something very similar kind of a game last year. It was a little bit cleaner of a game, and there wasn't as many penalties as there were last year. However, there was still that little bit of chippiness too. And I warned our guys at the beginning of the week that we were not going to get buy-in, we were not going to get involved in that. And for the most part, we stayed out of it. You know, we had our fair share of penalties, but they were more of the aggressive nature, and I believe all of them were on the offensive side.
Yeah, to you, in your team's credit, we've seen this against Georgia Tech, against Charleston Southern last year, against Alabama. The penalties for after the play type of stuff always comes from the opponents. Your guys are able to stay away from that and just focus on the football.
Some of it is just the way that we play. We can needle people a little bit. We can kind of a little bit. We wear on people's nerves. It's just want to get yards and keep on coming at you. And people don't like it when you play football that way anymore. And that's what we got to continue to do. That's what's been successful for us.
You mentioned earlier this week in your weekly press conference that you were happy Charleston Southern was the opponent after Georgia Tech because it's a little bit easier to avoid any sort of letdown. You have a rivalry game, you're returning home, a little bit easier for the guys to make sure they stay on task following that big win against Georgia Tech.
Well, there was 2 things there. One is that's a number 3 football team. You've got to be careful of that one. Number 2, they were way better than a team. I thought they played a North Carolina A&T team that was very good. Them very tight. And the other thing that you got to worry about is how bad you beat them the year before. So you got to throw all those things out when it is a close rivalry game, and we're playing the backup quarterback there. So we had a lot of things out working against us, even though I thought we had some momentum coming out of the Georgia Tech game.
Yeah, you warned us here last week. I know you told your guys, hey, 0-3, but look past that record. And you look at Charleston Southern, 4 games this year. They've played 3 ranked teams, and then South Carolina was the 4th one. Were you surprised at all, with all of that said, the way the first half went and opened up? 7-3 at halftime. The 2 scores come on the final possessions. The 2 teams traded punts on the first total 10 possessions of that game. It was a defensive battle. Was that where you were anticipating, or were you a little bit surprised how the game started?
Well, with where we were on the offensive side, we played field position most of the day. And that was more of the intent of everything. We were going to just try to pound the ball out a little bit. 2 things that were working in our favor was that we've got a good field goal kicker and we've got a good punter, so we can flip a field. That was part of the reason why we decided to take the football at the beginning of the game, is get a couple of first down, or we at least got 1 first down, and we're able to flip the field a little bit, make them travel the field, and give them a little bit more of a hole to dig before we get the ball back. So I thought that worked out in our favor a little bit. I would have liked to have scored a little bit more in the first half. We had our opportunities, but penalties haunted us all day long, and it throws off a drive in a minute for us, whether it was an illegal block penalty. We had 2 of those, and one was downfield, one was legitimately downfield, and those are things that we can't overcome very easily, although we did overcome that one on the 54-yard touchdown pass. But other than that, we really have a hard those, and then we just
want to focus on that touchdown. He backed you up. It was 1st and 22, I believe. You go back to the other side of midfield, and you come out very next play and 54-yard touchdown pass to Riley Webb, who had plenty of room there, got open, scored easily. Just take us through that play. There has been explosiveness this year in the pass game with Riley Webb.
That's the same play that we scored on against Towson in the fourth quarter, and it's been a very good play for us. It's been 2 for 2 for us. The number one thing about that play is we set it up all day long, and we set it up, and we caught the safety flat-footed, and anytime that Raleigh can catch a safety flat-footed, he's going to run it, and as soon as we saw him step flat-footed, we knew that he was going to be open. It was a matter of whether we can get the ball to him. It was a naked boot play. Murdaugh does a good job of on the naked, getting it, and then finding the receiver going back to his right. And something that's not easy because our A-back who was coming across the formation was able to at least interrupt a little bit of the pass rush. But Brian puts a good ball in there right on the money, and sure enough, it's 50 seconds. And Raleigh's in the end zone. Yeah,
it was a huge play, good touchdown. And for Riley Webb now, I looked up some notes. For him personally, that's 5 straight games with a touchdown. Now, in 8 of the last 10 seasons, Citadel have more than 5 touchdowns in a season. He's had a touchdown in 5 games. Hasn't since Andre Roberts scored in 10 straight games over a decade ago. Lou Conte, your offensive coordinator, told us in the pregame show on the radio this past week that he has the measurables of an NFL wide receiver. He just may get overlooked because of this triple option offense that doesn't focus on the wide receivers. I mean, how good has Riley Webb been for you guys lately?
Oh, he's been outstanding. And when I moved him from safety to wide receiver, I said, you can be an NFL wide receiver. Doesn't matter that you're here, doesn't matter anything, because they're going to see you size-wise, speed-wise, and then all we've got to do is just develop your pass-catching skills, which he did, to his credit, all in the offseason. And he's an explosive playmaker. Now, he definitely won't have the numbers, but people will find him, and people will be able to work him out here when he becomes eligible for the draft. And he's got a pretty good chance. And I don't know that I've said that about many players, especially on the offensive side, due to the fact that we're a niche offense, but he does have a chance. And he can. The wonderful thing about him is he can block. He's very unselfish, finds a way to get open. He can play all the positions in the wide receiver spot. So very, very smart young man, graduated in 3 years, working on his MBA. Another one of those guys that's an exceptional student athlete as well.
Yeah, always seems to be the fastest guy out there on the field. What does that dimension add to your offense when, of course, we know it's about keeping the football on the ground, but when you do put it in the air, you know, as I said, touchdown 5 straight games, big playability from one of your receivers on the outside.
Well, it's the first time, and really that you saw it was the Elon game. We took him deep, and I took a couple shots with him. He got behind the first one. We got the penalty off of the, I believe that was off the onside kick. We went after it pretty good, and we got the penalty on that one, and then we had gotten backed up in that same drive, and we went after the same guy with Raleigh again. We gave him a little bit of a stutter and go, and that's all it takes for Raleigh to get free. Like I said, you get flat-footed, and he can go top on you. So both of those were the first time that you really see him stretch it. And then you saw it on Saturday night where all he needed was a flat-footed safety. He got that, and then he's going to outrun that guy all day long.
Brian Murdaugh, it was a matchup between two quarterbacks in their first career starts. The win 22-13. How would you assess Brian?
Well, as far as first start goes, I mean, it was outstanding. Number one, over. And that was what we asked him to do: manage the football game, get the snap, and continue first downs. Earlier, it wasn't a matter of Brian Murdaugh getting penalties. It was a matter of the rest of the guys out there. We were distributing the ball just fine. We were moving the ball just fine. I thought we would have scored a little bit more with Brian there if we hadn't gotten so many penalties on the offensive side. So Brian did a good job of it, managed the game extremely well, and really did everything that we asked him to do. And I didn't change many of the play calls as if Brandon was in there either.
Yeah, I was going to ask, from our vantage point, it looked like the same offense each week, so not much of a change offensively. You rolled with the same game plan. Yeah,
we're not going to be able to do it too much and change who we are. That's our identity, and that's the way we figure out to win football games. And we just got to rely on some other guys when we do have those occasions. We tossed the ball a little bit more than we had in the past, got it to the A-backs. Remus had a couple touchdowns. The B-backs by committee were in there and working as hard as they possibly could.
Yeah, there were some wrinkles, it seemed like, in the passing game where it looked like a sort of a throwback screen was involved. Awanze had his first career catch, as we touched on, that deep touchdown to Riley Webb. So you told us last week that in terms of throwing the football, if Murdaugh's out there, he's certainly capable, and you guys looked like you did a couple different things, or just using some plays for the first time in a few games in the air.
Yeah, Brian's a perfectly capable passer. He's got a very strong arm. We wanted to do some simple things, get him some simple reads, and back is something we had been working on all off season there. We get a lot of over pursuit on our toss play, and it comes to toss play. So it's a game screen, which is kind of nice to have, and it acts as a counter for us.
How is Brandon progressing this week now?
He's been fine. He's been working in there every day. A little bit of a game time decision for us, but I feel confident that he's operational right now.
We'll continue to recap the win, and later on turn our attention to the game coming up this Saturday with Sanford on the road to start Southern Conference plays. It's the Coaches Show with the head coach, Brent Thompson. Time for our first time out here from the Marina Variety Store Restaurant in downtown Charleston at 17 Lockwood Drive, right here on ESPN Radio, 94.7 FM and 910 AM.
Right the first time, or even the 25th. To become an expert requires a lot of hard work. But ultimately, the more experienced you are, the better you become. The doctors and team at Roper St. Francis Healthcare are the area's most experienced. We mend the most adult hearts, we perform the most joint replacements, and we treat the most adult cancers. When it comes to what matters most, your health, choose the most experienced team. Roper St. Francis Healthcare. Experience matters.
Seals Outboard has been selling quality products for over 50 years. Products like Sea Hunt Boats with its exclusive Carolina Flare Vortex hull design for the driest, smoothest, most comfortable ride on the water. Located in Mount Pleasant and Charleston, Seals Outboard is a 5-star certified dealer for Yamaha outboards. Your boating adventures are endless in possibilities with a boat from Seals Outboard. See us at sealsoutboard.com.
This is the Pepsi for serious fans and serious eats. This is the Pepsi for Sundays at the ballpark and days off at your favorite pizza joint. Right, Aaron?
Best slice in New York.
Whatever your this is the Pepsi for you.
How do we make sure there's toppings in each bite of Papa John's pizza? We check 80,000 times a year. Now get an extra large 2-topping pizza for just $11. Everyone's doing their part to make game day better. How do we make sure there's in each bite of Papa John's pizza? We check 80,000 times a year. Now get an extra large 2-topping pizza for just $11. Everyone's doing their part to make your game day better.
Pizza with Pepsi. Delicious.
Mark Lee became the first Navy SEAL, sacrificing his life for our freedoms and his SEAL teammates. America's Mighty Warriors was born out of Mark's challenge to pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life. We honor our troops and Gold Star families by providing programs that assist recovery after injury or loss. Partner with us by making a generous donation. Text MARK to 234-231-9284. America's Mighty Warriors, supporting our troops and the families of the fallen.
Selection. Service. Quality. Value. See what everyone is talking about. Ashley Furniture Home Store.
Charleston Crab House has been serving locals and visitors alike for the last 20 years. We have our crispy whole flounder. We have the seared ahi tuna. You name it, in the seafood business, we have it.
Be sure to stop by the Tiger and Leaf Lounge whenever you visit our locations. We have many frozen and specialty drinks, awesome margaritas. One of my favorites is the Wapu Punch.
If you don't like it down in the historic district, come over to James Island, sit on the Intercoastal Waterway. It is an unbelievable view where it's southern seafood at sensible prices and a darn good time.
It's hard to get something right the first time, or even the 25th. To become an expert requires a lot of hard work. But ultimately, the more experienced you are, the better you become. The doctors and
Welcome back to the Coaches Show here at the Marina Variety Store Restaurant, where you can find us every Wednesday night during the football season at 17 Lockwood Drive. Standing room only tonight as the Bulldogs, coming off that win against Charleston Southern, and head into conference play now 2-2 against Sanford on the road this Saturday. Talking with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson, as we continue to recap the win Saturday against Charleston Southern before looking ahead to conference play. And, Coach, you referenced Remus Bulmer in the big game he had Saturday with those 2 touchdowns. Nice to see him get in the end zone for the first time in Citadel uniform. Yeah, he had the one good run on the counter play, which was nice for him. We had set that play up. We had run a little bit of toss for him, and that was pretty much an easy walk for him. The next one was a little bit more difficult. The play was actually supposed to go inside, and when I saw the play bounce outside, he made me very angry because he was about to lose about 7 or 8 yards on the play, and somehow he beat the safety all the way to the pylon in the end zone. But I came off and I still got mad at him and told him he should still hit it up and inside of there. It cost us a game right there, but he does have good speed and he had a pretty good feel for it. I just don't know if he really wanted to hit it up and in there or not, but we'll find out later on in the year, I think. Yeah, I want to ask you about that because when he does get out on the edge, you could see that patience, a good footwork. He seems to be really good in the open field and comfortable out there. Yeah, not in a contract to run inside, I don't think. I got to look at that again and see what we need in the offseason. But to be honest with you, he's done a good job blocking, which was renegotiated recently with him, but I think he's done a good job of that. We'll continue to monitor that throughout the season. On the other side of the football Saturday, the defense, big plays, and none bigger than it seemed like the 4th down stop from Willie there midway through the 3rd quarter, where the momentum had shifted to their side for a little bit. They were side of the field, you get the stop, and then from there you seem to take off and take over that game after that 4th down stop. Really, there was about 4 or 5 plays that you can go in that game and really say, man, that was the contributing factor in that football. Drops the punt, and he dropped it not on the snap, he dropped it on the drop, just missed it, picks the thing up and puts it out at the 1 yard line. We had Rylan Ayers down there and bats the ball out at the 1 yard line. I mean, that's a fabulous, phenomenal play right there. Yeah. Because that gets us the 2 points back that we needed. Right. The other one was, or the other 3 or 4 came on that possession that you're talking about, is the percentages. I'm all in the analytics right now, but the percentages inside the 1 yard line is like 99% that you're going to score a touchdown. And all we were really looking for was to kill the clock off and at least kill 1 or 2 plays and make them, kill their last timeout or, take about another 80 seconds off the clock, and we'd be in pretty good shape if we had to do the onside kick and everything. So I thought all those scenarios came into play, and it was kind of an interesting deal. But Willie Eubanks makes 3 of the 4, and the other one went out of bounds on a fade ball. So, I mean, that's a fabulous effort. I don't think I've seen a goal line stand like that from inside of the 1 yard line ever in my career. Phenomenal, outstanding, great goal line defense. Yes, it sure was. It was an incredible way to end the game there to allow you to run out the clock. So Eubanks, as you mentioned, 3 of the 4 stops there. According to the stat sheet, he had the final 5 tackles of the game for you. He had an interception in the second half. He had that pass deflection on a 4th down. I mean, what a second half he had. Yeah, and tell me about it. He should have been Player of the Week. Yeah. For all that, that's a huge game for anybody, and for us, he gets the turnover that ends up leading to the score right there in a big rivalry game. Mm-hmm. I don't know how he doesn't. Yeah, certainly. He played his heart out there in the second half and helped you get the win 22-13 against Charleston Southern. At the end of the game, the goal line stand was the big sequence to wrap up that game. And, these games are always, I always say when talking to people, win or lose, you play nothing but exciting games. And for a coach, you'll take the wins however you get them. You're not going to complain about a victory. But do you ever wish that maybe it wasn't such an emotional roller coaster that every once in a while you could kind of cruise from start to finish on the sidelines to a victory? I've really just come accustomed to it at the end is the way that we are and who we are, they're all going to be fairly close. And as long as we feel like we've gotten over the hump with those 4th quarter games that we missed out on in Elon and Towson, I feel better about that every day that we get into one of those games. And as I said after the Elon game to the team, I said, days like this will pay off for us at the end. And we're going to get over that hump, and we're going to know what it's like to be in those situations. And it may feel really bad right now at the Elon game, but, hey, that's going to change, and eventually we're going to get over this, and we're going to figure out a way to win these games. And that's happened, and it was great that would happen the very next week. For that defense, which may still be a work in progress, new defensive coordinator, new scheme, a lot of young players on that defense, a possession like that goal line stand at the end where you stuff them out of the end zone on 3 straight runs, the incompletion is thrown in there as well, is that a sequence that can go a long way or that this defense can carry with them into next week to build off of?
It should be. The way that I look at it is watching those guys progress. They played an outstanding defensive game. You know, they let up. They missed a couple of tackles. The quarterback was dynamic. We had him wrapped up a couple of times. He scrambles out and makes a great play to Schwarting over there, and they scored that touchdown. But really, we had him bottled up. It was one of those things where you're asking guys to cover for a long period of time at that point. But really, the defensive stand really should be what we hang our hat on for the rest of the year. We're capable of being a very good defense. I knew it from the start because we've gone against Tony for shooting all of the spring ball and then all of camp. I knew what they were capable of, and those guys will do a heck of a job over there. And I want to see them continue to get better because that's going to mean we're going to be winning a lot of games.
Getting ready for Sanford coming up Saturday in conference play. You mentioned when that backup quarterback, or at least Saturday, the backup quarterback, Chambers came in, and athletic quarterback running all over the field in the second half. What changes from a defensive standpoint when they make a switch like that and go from really a pure pocket passer? I don't think the previous quarterback Mulgrim left the pocket once, and now Chambers is running all over, and it's mid-game. You're making adjustments on the sideline. How tough is that for defense to try to account for now a completely different style?
Well, we kind of sensed it at the end of the North Carolina A&T. He came in and was going to be the starter, so we figured that he would be the starter for our game as well. And so we game planned a little bit for that, and we gave him a lot of different looks. He's a young quarterback in there, and they're going to throw the ball a lot, so you want to give him a lot of different secondary looks, a lot of different blitz looks. And you're playing that way for 2 straight quarters, and then the next thing you know is they make a quarterback change, and now you've got to make a whole mindset change in the way that you're calling a defensive game at that point. And you want to try to give them as many of those same different looks that the first quarterback got. What, by the way, I think ended up winning us a lot of that time of possession because they ended up having to take some timeouts that they really shouldn't have taken. They let the clock get down where we were checking, they were checking. I mean, it was one of those check fests out there that I hate getting involved in as the offensive guy. But on the defensive side, I mean, you're just sitting in there waiting and changing your defense and giving them different looks, which I think helps us win the football game because they had to burn timeouts. So really, you had to change your whole complete thought process as a defensive guy when you get a different quarterback in there. What looks do you want to give them that's different than the last guy?
You mentioned that punt from Matt Campbell that was down at the half-yard line there inside the pylon. For Campbell's standards, maybe he wasn't having a normal Matt Campbell day in the first half. Then, as you alluded to, I mean, drops the ball, looks like it could be a disaster, and he ends up turning it into an incredible play where it was a punt of about 62 yards, I think, down inside the 1 by Ayers on the other end, and led to the 2-point safety. Campbell and your special teams, as you've already kind of touched on, overall this year they've made some really big plays for you to help swing some games.
Yeah, Matt's a game changer. You know, you watch him in there. We took a penalty, and he still almost put the daggum thing in the tennis courts. He can boot the heck out of that thing. Sometimes it's a little bit too much. Sometimes we've got to watch where we are, but it certainly can help us out in those situations. And that one, he kept his composure, somehow dropped the ball, keeps his composure, and be able to put the ball out at 60-something yards was phenomenal. Now, we've also seen him hit about a 20, 25-yarder, but those are few and far between because really, for the most part, he's averaging right around 45 yards right now.
I do want to ask you about analytics, and because you've touched on it a little bit without digging in so far in a couple of your answers tonight, but a lot of people have asked about the kick returns and the amount of fair catches compared to kickoff returns. I saw an answer you gave in regards to that touched on the use of analytics and what those have told you about fair catching kickoffs at a certain spot on the field.
Yeah, for us it's the 3-yard line, and we determined that the 3-yard line, we did our research, we did our analytics on it, is if you take one from within the 3-yard line or so, you have very little chance of getting it beyond the 25-yard line, which would be very easy for us to be able to just fair catch that and spot the ball and let's go. However, is if you catch it outside and you got a chance to get it plus to the 30-yard line, not only do your chances of scoring increase, but you also get more of like a 70% chance outside the 5-yard line to get it to the 30-yard line. So we've used that for most of them. Now, I did backtrack on that with the Georgia Tech game. He was putting them well deep into the end zone, miskicked a couple of them, and I looked a little bit foolish out there because we probably should have, but I told Remus, hey man, let's just fair catch these this week. They're covering the field extremely well. Let's just get the ball back to the offense, and part of that is half the game right there.
I know Coach Bauckham on the basketball side of things brought somebody on staff last year to focus on analytics. Are there certain guys on your staff? How big of a a thing has this become, the analytics side of coaching a football team?
I knew nothing about analytics, and there's two things that really led me to research and do a little bit more about it. One was there was an article that I believe Jeff Hartzell wrote about the baseball team doing analytics, and that was the first I'd ever heard of it. And so I called Tony up and I said, look, how much are you using? And Tony's an old school guy, kind of like myself, doesn't buy into a whole lot of it because we've been using quite a bit of it, and we've come to like it. And here's how it breaks down for us. And the numbers don't really lie. Second time is we were visiting with Army. Actually, Army was down here visiting with us, and just by chance, I said, you guys had gone for it on fourth down about 6 times. How do you kind of, moxie essentially to go for it? He said, well, it's all analytics. He said, coach goes by it every single time that we have a fourth down opportunity. So I said, well, I went back up there and I visited with him, and I said, well, tell me a little bit more about it. He told me more about it. I called up the company. They came down and gave us a conversation, and it seemed to make a lot of sense. It really got me into not only that, but whether you go for 2 or not, whether you fourth down or not, when do you timeouts, because they evaluate everything at the end of your game, and they actually, for the first time, get an opportunity to be corrected and coached as a head coach, and they go for it, and they nothing about anything what the number said you should do in that situation.
You're fascinated by this because I am a number, and even Bill Belichick, football history. I think it's Ernie Adams is the name.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, he has the coach up in the booth that's telling him, what the analytics say, what they should do. So, do you have a coach? Do you have somebody who's in your ear saying, hey, if this situation comes up, this is what the numbers say, or this is what we should do?
Yeah, he gives me a go for number all the time. No matter where we are in the field, I've got a go number, and we keep that in our play calling mind. I tell Lou up there so Lou knows what it is. That way the play call doesn't get out of control. Like, hey, if we want to take we know whether we have the 4 downs to get it or not. And it changes every week. It changes on our opponent. It changes upon kickers. It changes on their kickers and punters as well. We get a book every week. A guy comes up to me and says, here's the number. Here's what it is. I keep that number in my head. I keep it in the process for all the calls and all the decision making, and then there.
I don't want you to give away all your secrets, but, Howard says he's more into analytics, which is a combination of what your eyes see and what the numbers tell you. So for a coach that comes from that old school style, has there been not only an adjustment but kind of a blend to factor in those, but also keep instinct with you with what you're seeing out there as the game unfolds?
Here's the general rule of thumb on analytics is this: is if you use it, you better use it. If you use it sometimes and you don't use it other times, the numbers will start to add up against you at that point. Numbers for you, better off just using it. I've gotten away from my gut in some of those. Now, it does give you some gray area. 2 was a little bit of a gray area this past weekend, and it wasn't necessarily a gray area. It was the aggressive. Already up by 14. Chances of winning were something like 70% by 16. And if you're only up by 15, then the chances are 40, 50%, something in that range. I decided to go with the higher one. It was a rivalry game. We were at home. I was feeling good about it, even before we were going for 2 there.
I was going to ask you about that play and that decision, because maybe, and 2 people asked about that decision, and I thought, idea from you and your staff, because as you said, if you don't get it, you're still up 14. If you get it, you make them have to go for it. And so the decision seemed like a good time, analytics or otherwise, to go for 2 and try to make them have to get a couple 2-point.
Yeah, it's interesting. Normally, I would have kicked that in probably every other scenario in my career, but I felt the time and we had the guy open. We had a great play called there. I thought it was a good opportunity. We just kind of missed the throw. It was a little bit rushed. We didn't have quite the personnel. We were missing one guy off the field, but other than that, I thought it was a good aggressive call. We were rolling. I wanted to keep the momentum on our side.
As a coach and an offensive coach, do you have certain plays, kind of like the Eagles said, the Philly special, do you have certain plays saved for when you do call a 2-point play?
Yeah, we work them every week, and you've got to have about 3 or 4 of them, and you've got to have probably a bank of about half a dozen of them or so, because we always have 1 or 2 solid that we're going to work every single have as a safe call. Is there's a point in some games where you need to go up by where you need to go for 2, and you may be up by a certain number, where if you don't get it, it's not a huge deal with the football, throwing it at times, so we always call, and we always have two that we're ready to go.
We'll look ahead to the Sanford game coming up in just a moment. Last thing on the analytical discussion, you've been coaching now for 20 years. Is that the biggest change in football during your coaching time, the addition of the sabermetrics and numbers? What would be the biggest change? What's the biggest difference when you first started, or even when you were playing in college, compared to now?
Well, the offenses are completely different now. Is they make you defend every part of the field right now. That would be the number one change is the offense, and it really affects how much the defense, and affects your defensive players more than anything else. Is you can't get away with bigger, thicker, slower bodies in there that are going to be A gap and B gap pigs in there. You've got to have everybody on the field that's got to be able to run. And if you can't run, you've got an ankle, you've got whatever, bum toe, turf toe, whatever it is, you're going to struggle out there. You can't even play the game anymore. That's number one. Number two is the analytics. And I didn't buy into the analytics, but I noticed a guy like Jeff Monken using analytics, and he is an old school, pound it kind of a guy. And I said, look, if this guy can do it, and he's had some success doing it, and speaking to him about it, it made perfect sense to me.
And you guys have been one of the best teams in the country on fourth downs, as you mentioned, with Army and the analytics and decision-making on fourth down. Bulldogs coming off that win 22-13 against Charleston Southern on Saturday. When we come back, we'll shift our attention towards conference play, which begins this Saturday on the road with the other Bulldogs in Sanford. 3 o'clock kickoff Eastern time this Saturday. Coverage will begin locally at 1 o'clock. And when we come back here in the Coaches Show from the Marina Variety Store Restaurant at 17 Lockwood Drive, we'll start to preview that game and get into some of the X's and O's of this Saturday's game with Coach Brent Thompson. It's the Coaches Show with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson, right here on ESPN Radio, 94.7 FM and 910 AM.
Roper St. Francis Healthcare are the area's most experienced. We mend the most adult hearts, we perform the most joint replacements, and we treat the most adult cancers. When it comes to what matters most, your health, choose the most experienced team. Roper St. Francis Healthcare. Experience matters.
Seals Outboard has been selling quality products for over 50 years. Products like Sea Hunt boats with its exclusive Carolina Flare Vortex hull design for the driest, smoothest, most comfortable ride on the water. Located in Mount Pleasant and Charleston, Seals Outboard is a 5-star certified dealer for Yamaha outboards. Your boating adventures are endless in possibilities with a boat from Seals Outboard. See us at sealsoutboard.com.
This is the Pepsi for serious fans and eats. This is the Pepsi for Sundays at the ballpark and days off at your favorite pizza joint. Right, Aaron?
Best slice in New York.
Whatever you're craving, this is the Pepsi for you.
How do we make sure there's toppings in Papa John's pizza? We check 80,000 times a year. Now get an extra large 2-topping pizza for just $11. Everyone doing their part to make game day better. How do we make sure there's toppings in each bite of Papa John's pizza? We check 80,000 times a year. Now get an extra large 2-topping pizza for just $11. Everyone's doing their part to make your game day better.
Pizza with Pepsi. Delicious.
Mark Lee became the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq, sacrificing his life for our freedom and SEAL teammates. America's Mighty Warriors was born out of Mark's challenge to pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life. We honor our troops and Gold Star families by providing programs that assist recovery after injury or loss. Partner with us by making a generous donation. Text MARK to 234-231-9284. America's Mighty Warriors, supporting our troops and the families of the fallen.
Style. Selection. Service. Quality. Value. See what everyone is talking about. Ashley Furniture Home Store.
Charleston Crab House has been
26, exit 211A. Business online at jonesford.com.
Back on the Coaches Show, the head coach Brent Thompson of the Citadel Bulldogs here at the Marina Variety Store restaurant at 17 Lockwood Drive in downtown Charleston, just down the road from the Citadel. Packed house tonight. You can tell the food is good because, well, you don't hear anybody in the background. That means they're all eating. And we're listening to, not listening to me. I'm not nearly as interesting as the head coach. And, Coach, as we get ready for this game with Sanford on Saturday, as we turn our attention to the upcoming schedule, heading into conference play, let's first look back at the matchup last year at Sanford, right down the street at Johnson Haygood Stadium. And, you know, that was when Brandon Rainey was still kind of new on the scene as a quarterback, at least. Their starting quarterback for you guys. And what a game and what a win that was, outscoring them 28-0 in the last 16 minutes for a dramatic win there at the late in the season.
Yeah, it was an outstanding football game. It was a homecoming game for us, and we didn't start off so well. We got down by a lot early, and then we started off the second half with a fumble. Our defense picked it up, and they were able to get us a couple of turnovers. One was in the red zone that we were able to convert, and then all of a sudden it was off in there. We're one of those teams that we're going to lean on you, and eventually that's what happened. Is we leaned until they broke.
How different of a team are they this year? I know different quarterback. We'll get into that a little bit. But overall, for this Sanford team, the roster, the turnover, how different of a team will we see this Saturday compared to that one here last year?
Well, completely different on offense. I think they lost some pretty good players, including the quarterback, as well as the McKnight kid. McKnight was very good. They are a little bit more experienced up front. Same group of guys up front, a little bit more experienced than they were last year, having a year under their belt. And then the quarterback's way different. He's more of a runner. He can put the ball where it needs to be. And when you spread the field like they do and they make you defend the whole field, the quarterback really becomes dangerous, and that's what we've got to watch out for.
Yeah, you mentioned Kelvin McKnight. I saw he did sign with the Denver Broncos in the NFL. I don't know if he stuck in the league, but a talented receiver that they had lost from a year ago. The preseason polls are statistically over the years very inaccurate. They don't mean a ton. We know you made it clear how you felt about the Citadel's standing, but Sanford was picked 6th in the poll. Now that we've gone a couple weeks into the season, a lot of people I've talked to feel like Sanford may be more towards the top 4 best teams in this league. When you look at the Southern Conference, when you look at Sanford, what do you see in this team and how they stack up maybe with the rest of the SoCon?
Well, I thought they were picked 6th based upon the way they finished last year a little bit. However, the fact that they were losing the quarterback and they were also losing a wide receiver, that was pretty good. Nobody really counted on them getting a transfer quarterback from South Florida, coming in, competing, and then eventually winning the job. They've always been a very talented football team on both sides of the ball. They've got tremendous athletes. They've got some good transfers there. I think they do a good job of recruiting there. Good school. So year in and year out, they always should be in the top 3 or 4 in the league just by their personnel and what they do. And Coach Hatcher does a good job of scheming people up, and his offense is very tough to defend as well. So, no, I thought they were also a little bit underrated. And preseason polls, they are what they are. They're kind of there to get the fans interested and give everybody something to talk about until the season actually gets here.
Preseason poll. The Citadel fans were all surprised and caught off guard by that as well. We head into the conference play where right now it's certainly grabs. People are surprised by the start for Wofford. VMI went to ETSU, beat them on the road. So it's already been a surprising start to conference play. You begin conference play this week, heading in with a couple of wins. What's your read on the SoCon so far as you gear up for your Southern Conference schedule?
Well, we're about to find out here in a couple of weeks because we've got no out-of-conference in between. We've got one bye week here coming up in the next 3 or 4 weeks. However, the number one issue for me is we haven't seen any of the on film. I watched Wofford against Sanford. That's one of the crossover games, and we've seen Furman. So we've really seen 3 teams, if you include Sanford, in there. We haven't seen any VMI or ETSU because we haven't had any crossover games yet. But what we've seen is that Furman by far is the team that's out there doing a lot of damage, putting up a lot of points, playing pretty good defense out there. playing 2 Division I games and playing them very close, and then having opportunities to put it on. They put it on Charleston Southern pretty good. So that's a team that you're going to watch. You're going to see how they ended last year. I think their quarterback Rangers playing extremely well. Wofford, I think they're going to get back to doing what they do. They'll get back in the hunt here in a little while. VMI go ahead and upsets ETSU in overtime. That's an interesting one, being that I haven't seen either one of those 2 teams either, and I think Sanford's probably a top 2 or 3 team.
I ask you a lot about the schedule, and as a coach, there's not much you can do about the schedule, and you don't want to spend time worrying about the schedule. But to start conference play with Samford, going on the road there, long trip, does that mean anything to you, to the team, to jump into conference play with Samford on the road like this?
Well, you're talking about a team that spent 5 days in upstate, on the road, and then going over there and playing Elon. Not that we played well, but we're fairly used to being on the road. And we played Georgia Tech on the road 5 hours, so we've got to go 2 more hours. We have been a fairly good road team. That really doesn't affect us too much. I think we may catch up on more sleep that we do on the road than we do at home. So that may help us out as well. So the only thing that sticks in the back of my mind is we did not fare very well the last time that we were there. Some of that is environment there. Some of that was we were 3-0, thinking that we were pretty good coming off of a good 16 team that maybe we had to be a little bit more hungry of a football team, and that was completely my fault. So I had to make sure that I told everybody that, hey, the last time that we were there, we didn't fare so well. We need to be a hungry, good football team going into this game.
Yeah, you're used to long trips, even just in the conference, whether it's all the way to VMI, last year, of course, going to Towson. Do you do anything differently? I know the team, you're leaving Thursday. What else do you maybe do differently on a trip like this that is a little bit longer and extends even another day earlier to get ready for a football game than, say, just a short trip up to the upstate to take on a Furman or a Wofford?
We don't do a whole lot too different. We even try to keep our schedule about the same. We do a walkthrough. This time we're doing a walkthrough at Georgia State Stadium for us. They've done that the last 2 years for us, which has been nice. It's still a little bit we try to keep the practices same length, the meeting's about the same content, everything's about the same. Even if we were at home, our timeline is very similar. Once we get to the hotel, we are a very structured, routine-oriented team, and when you get out of that routine, we feel the effects of it. So I try to keep them as much in rhythm and in groove as possible, even when there are times where it's very almost next to get in that, like this trip, one of those. Chattanooga trip is that way as well, but we have fared very well. I mean, I don't think that we've gone to Sanford and Chattanooga not won a game because of it, because we've won at both places in here.
Bulldogs getting ready to take on Sanford Saturday on the road. 3 o'clock kick here locally, Eastern Time. Coverage begins at 1 o'clock locally here in the Low Country on the Citadel Radio Network, which is 102.1 FM, 92.1 FM, and 1450 AM. Looking at this particular matchup with Sanford to begin conference play, when looking at the defense specifically, Sanford this year, and maybe a small sample size, but when trying to stop the run, they've allowed over 250 yards per game, already 11 rushing touchdowns surrendered by Sanford. When you turn on the tape, what do you see from that defense and maybe some things that you can take advantage of with your rushing attack?
Well, they haven't quite seen our rushing attack just yet, but if you watch the Youngstown game, Youngstown gets downhill on them pretty good. Youngstown is a pretty big and physical team. We're not quite as big as those guys. Alabama A&M, very similar. They are big. They're a little bit more zone. They had a pretty good quarterback in the mix for them there. Tennessee Tech did a pretty good job of coming downhill on them, and they were able to score a bunch of points late in the fourth quarter there. So that was more of a throw fest kind of a game. So we've got to just do what we do. Is we're going to be completely different than everybody. We all know that we're going to run the football. We're going to take our chances in the play action game. There is no hiding that fact. That's who we are. That's what we've been successful with. Just as if they're on the other end, they're going to run it as few times as possible, throw it around, and play up-tempo football.
Last year's game turned into one of those high-scoring games. I think it was 42-27 was the final. Do you have to try to do some things to stay out of a shootout type of game with Sanford? They play a lot of high-scoring games. Do you want to make sure that you control the tempo and the pace of the game and avoid those types of track meet shootout type of affairs that they've been playing lately?
Well, anytime that we really play and anytime that we've kind of adopted this mentality, maybe since we gave up the no huddle a couple of years ago, and that some of that was a little bit done on purpose. Some of that was just out of necessity for where we were in the program at the time. But we have kind of embraced it on the offensive side, and we're going for time of possession right now. We're going for a limited amount of possessions. You want to limit your opponent to about 9 or 10 possessions if you can on the offensive side. And we really just called that was really, like we said after the Georgia Tech game, is we want to play football on our terms. terms. If we have to play it on somebody else's terms, we're not going to win many of those games.
We'll continue to get ready for the game Saturday with Sanford on the road with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson. Take one final break, come back, continue to get ready for conference play, and wrap things up here from the Marina Variety Store Restaurant at 17 Lockwood Drive. It's the Coach's Show every Wednesday night with the head coach, Brent Thompson, right here on ESPN Radio, 94.7 FM and 910 AM.
Locals and visitors alike for the last 20 years. We have our crispy whole flounder. We have the seared ahi tuna. You name it, in the seafood business, we have it.
Be sure to stop by the Tiger and Leaf Lounge whenever you visit our locations. We have many frozen and specialty drinks, awesome margaritas. One of my favorites is the Wapu Punch.
If you don't like it down in the historic district, come over to James Island, sit on the Intercoastal Waterway. It is an unbelievable view where it's southern seafood at sensible prices and a darn good time.
It's hard to get something right the first time, or even the 25th. To become an expert requires a lot of hard work. But ultimately, the more experienced you are, the better you become. The doctors and team at Roper St. Francis Healthcare are the area's most experienced. We mend the most adult hearts, we perform the most joint replacements, and we treat the most adult cancers. When it comes to what matters most, your health, choose the most experienced team. Roper St. Francis Healthcare. Experience matters.
Seals Outboard has been selling quality products for over 50 years. Products like Sea Hunt Boats with its exclusive Carolina Flare Vortex hull design for the driest, smoothest, most comfortable ride on the water. Located in Mount Pleasant and Charleston, Seals Outboard is a 5-star certified dealer for Yamaha outboards. Your boating adventures are endless in possibilities with a boat from Seals Outboard. See us at sealsoutboard.com.
This is the Pepsi for serious fans and serious eats. This is the Pepsi for Sundays at the ballpark and days off at your favorite pizza joint. Right, Aaron?
Best slice in New York.
Whatever you're craving, this is the Pepsi for you.
How do we make sure there's toppings in each bite of Papa John's pizza? We check 80,000 times a year. Now get an extra large 2-topping pizza for just $11. Everyone's doing their part to make your game day better. How do we make sure there's toppings in each bite of Papa John's pizza? We check 80,000 times a year. Now get an extra large 2-topping pizza for just $11. Everyone's doing their part to make your game day better.
Pizza with Pepsi. Delicious.
Mark Lee became the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq, sacrificing his life for our freedoms and his SEAL teammates. America's Mighty Warriors was born out of Mark's challenge to pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life. We honor our troops and Gold Star families by providing programs that assist recovery after injury or loss. Partner with us by making a generous donation. Text MARK to 234-231-9284. America's Mighty Warriors, supporting our troops and the families of the fallen.
Style. Selection. Service. Quality. Value. See what everyone is talking about. Ashley Furniture Home Store.
Charleston Crab House has been serving locals and visitors alike for the last 20 years. We have our crispy whole flounder. We have the seared ahi tuna. You name it, in the seafood business, we have it.
Be sure to stop by the Tiger and Leaf Lounge whenever you visit our locations. We have many frozen and specialty drinks, awesome margaritas. One of my favorites is the Wapu Punch.
If you don't like it down in the historic district, come over to James Island, sit on the Intercoastal Waterway. It is an unbelievable view.
For conference play this Saturday with Sanford on the road, 3 o'clock kickoff. Coverage begins locally at 1 o'clock on the radio network here in the Low Country, 102.1 FM, 92.1 FM, 1450 AM, the flagship stations of the Citadel Radio Network. Coach, as we get ready for this game Saturday with Sanford, new quarterback Devlin Hodges is gone, and as he touched on earlier, they replaced him with a transfer quarterback who comes in from South Florida, bigger program, and he's been running all over the place. What makes him such a tough quarterback for any defense?
Yeah, he's dynamic. He can make plays with his feet. He can throw it. And as I said earlier, so anytime that they spread the field and you got to defend all 53 1/3 yards of the field, as well as the quarterback as an extra runner, I mean, that's going to be very difficult. And that's the reason why they put up so many points. It's the reason why they've scored, and they've scored against everybody that he has been in the game for. And he can run that system. And it's added a little bit different dynamic. He's only very similar to the quarterback that they had about 4 or 5 years ago before Hodges was there, or really Hodges came in relief of him the 1 year that we had beaten him up there pretty good in 2015, I believe, and he was more of that kind of a caliber quarterback. But certainly the young man that they have right now is a phenomenal quarterback. He can stretch the field on in a bunch of different ways. And
you already have your defense certainly already has plenty of experience this year trying to defend those types of quarterbacks, whether it's Flacco or at Georgia Tech last week when Chambers came in for Charleston Southern. Is this quarterback similar at all to any quarterbacks that you guys have faced so far this season?
Similar to Flacco. He can do a lot of different things with the ball in his hand, and can get you at any moment.
Looking at and what happened this past week, we saw Logan Billings get some run out there at the B-back position as a freshman. Is he somebody we can expect to see a little bit more as the year?
You can probably see Logan a lot this week. We always play 3 fullbacks, and anytime one of them goes down, we just put the next one in there. Logan's been he's been ready to go. We moved him early on in camp. I really felt comfortable having 3 fullbacks in there. We needed one to train. The other 2 are they're spaced out by 1 year. Logan would be another year behind that, which would be kind of nice for us to be able to space out our fullbacks. I never want to get into a scenario where we were in 17 where we didn't have any. He's a guy that very, very tough kid. We had him at camp. Really liked him as a middle linebacker in high school. Never played the running back position, but runs extremely well. More of a runner that we don't have in the fullback position right now. And Clay and Amike are both very good perimeter, very good at the feet. Can get into narrow spaces. Sometimes you need a little bit of a hammerhead in there, which is what Logan is.
And it must have been a bit of a roller coaster for him on the sideline. He gets the carry, thinks maybe there's a fumble, then it's reviewed, and they get the correct call, and you guys were able to keep possession.
Yeah, that was the correct call. I had to look at it a couple times on my replay with our film, but that was the correct call. I mean, he was wrenched in there pretty good. The one thing that I liked when I saw him just on that one carry was he kept his feet moving. He wasn't going down. He was fighting for extra yards. That's also what I thought. Maybe the ball did come out early, but he was down.
Even though it wasn't a fumble, it got overturned. When he comes to the sideline, do you say anything, even if it's just encouragement, after a play like that where he does get that first carry and looks like maybe a fumble?
It wasn't until after the series, because I've got to process the next couple of play calls. So it wasn't until after the series that I went over and I talked to him and I said, "Look, hey, keep going. You'll be all right. I love the way you turn your feet in there. You'll be fine."
Another one is Sam Llewellyn, who I believe we saw at the A-back position last year, played B-back and then was at A-back on Saturday. Will we see more of that moving forward?
Yeah, Sam's gotten into the rotation, has done a good job. Sam's a tremendous blocker. We had him at B-back, and that was how the Logan Billings came into play there, as I was going to move Sam back to A-back, give me some more guys that have at least played out there. Sam got some snaps in the Charleston Southern game last year, as well as the Western game last year, so he was experienced at the A-back spot, had some game experience there, so I felt comfortable putting him in the game last week, had no issues with him. It was pretty good.
We talked about this last year, and we only have a couple minutes left, so we can't really do a deep dive, but with this new transfer rule where you can play guys for fewer than 5 games and still get that year back, do you consider something like that this early in the season where you get a guy in for a couple of games and still try to keep the eligibility or still try to get this year back, or is something like that not on your radar until maybe towards the end of the year when you're down to the final couple games?
There's a couple positions we are trying to do that. We're trying to save a couple. So, for example, we have an offensive lineman that may have been playing on the PAT field goal team, maybe just getting 1 or 2 snaps, and then that was going to burn a red shirt year. So we kept an eye on that. We got him out of there. We made a quick change on that one. Try to do a red shirt in that situation just for the kid's sanity as well. well as, hey, let's let him develop another year, and that way he's not just a 1-snap guy per game or 5 or 6 snap guy per game. We've done that with the special teams as well. As, hey, you got to start to keep an eye on that after a couple of games. The guys that we want a red shirt, so you can use that rule to help you out. The other thing that I really wanted to use that rule to help me out with is, hey, just at the end of the year when you're so low in numbers and you start to get guys a little bit banged up, the A-back position is a prime example of that. That's what happened. That's how Sam had to play last year. But the good thing was Sam only played in 2 games, and he still had his extra 2 games if he needed them. So he technically redshirted last year, but got some game experience. I love the new rule. I don't like how it's being used on occasion lately. However, that wasn't the intent of the rule. The rule does a great job for helping us out, the 63-man scholarship FCS teams, where at the end of the year is, you're lucky that you have some guys that are able to play a position over there, and you're just getting by. And we ran into that for years at the A-back position because it's a physically demanding position as well as the offensive line. It's good for the kids. It's good for the coaches. It helps you to be able to stay competitive in some regards. I don't like this. I don't like where it's going, and some people find a loophole with it, but no, that's inevitable, and that's going to happen no matter what.
Got about 90 seconds left with you. So for conference play beginning this Saturday with Samford, 3 o'clock kickoff, coverage at 1. What are some keys to this game coming out victorious? What are some of the things you're stressing to your team this week to make sure you go all the way there and come back with a victory Saturday against Samford?
You got to be a physical football team out there. You have got to be able to bring the game to them. You've got to be able to play your style of football and play it on your terms. If not, this team will be, they will explode for points on you if you don't watch out. And when you go, it could be a windfall of points. So stressing that, just getting first downs for us is going to be key. Pounding and grinding clock, it will be key for us.
Last question of the night before we let you go. I warned you before we hit the air, National One-Hit Wonder Day. I gave you time to think about it. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have a favorite one-hit wonder song that you can call to here?
I probably have a bunch of them, but I think the one that the one that comes to my mind was "I'm Too Sexy," Right Said Fred.
I'm not surprised. Coach. Toughest question of the night on National One-Hit Wonder Day. That's a good one. Coach, appreciate the time as always. Samford, kickoff Samford this Saturday, 3 o'clock. Coverage begins at 1 locally. Appreciate the time as always. Wish you the best of luck Saturday. We'll do it again here next week.
All right, see you up in Birmingham.
Absolutely. That's the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Brent Thompson. The Bulldogs battle Samford Saturday, 3 o'clock kickoff on the road. Coverage will begin at 1 o'clock in the Low Country, 102.1 FM, 92.1 FM, 1450 a.m. this Saturday. Appreciate everybody coming out and joining us tonight for the Coaches Show. We'll catch up with you a week from today, next Wednesday, 7 to 8 here from the Marina Variety Store and Restaurant on ESPN Radio, 94.7 FM and 910 a.m. Go Dogs!